Well, greetings, Series 7 test takers. This is the Series 7 guru coming to you from my studio here in fabulous Las Vegas with an explication request. We will explicate or help you with any question from any vendor. And today, somebody needs help on the difference between, let me get out my whiteboard here, between a bond point and a basis point. Those are different things. So let's put bond points over here. And let's put basis over here. And, bond point we should know is 1% of par, right? So 1% of par, we should definitely know par is 1,000. And so that means a bond point is $10, right? So that's a bond point, 1% of par. Let's put that over here. And then we also need to know, remember that in terms of trading, corporate and munis, the minimum denomination in terms of that pricing, and let's put that over here. Usually when we're being asked about a bond point, we're being asked about price, right? So, and we're talking about basis points, we're typically talking about yield. So, and then remember, we do get tested on this relationship between price and yield or yield and price in terms of the test itself. Now, in a basis point is 1/100th of that. So the way I think of that is, if it's 1/100th, that would be 10 cents. So how many 10 cents or dime are in $10? It would be 100. So 100 basis points equals 1%. And remember, that's the same thing as saying that that's a bond point. So let's change colors here. Let's pull this out this way, and let's pull it out this way. Okay, now here is where our test taker was struggling. I'm just trying to fit all that on the screen. Maybe I need a smaller font. Let's see. There we go. Okay, so, let's just put a line here. As we said, there is a relationship here. So 1/100th is the actual official definition, but 1/100th, again, there's 100 dimes. In other words, another way to think about this, if you'd like, it's a buffet. Take what you like, leave what you don't. But you could think of it as, well, $10 equals 100 dimes, right? I'll show you how I'm going to use that in just a sec as a kind of a trick. All right, so here were the two things that this person got asked about, this test taker got asked about. It says a bond has a 6%, 6.85, 6.95, or 6.85 basis. And remember, basis is the fancy word for yield to maturity. So every time I hear basis, I'm just going to, in my own mind, go, okay, that's what that means. And it says a 6.85 basis. And again, we'll put that there. And let's put a nice little box around that. As you can see, there's a lot of, setup involved here. So, I'm just doing the setup of the question. So a 7% GO bond, so this is a municipal question, is quoting a bond that has changed his quote from 6.85. So the yield to maturity used to be 6.85. And now the yield maturity is 6.95. So it went from 6.85 yield to maturity to 6.95. Now, remember, the yield to maturity goes up. That means, the price has gone down. That's a different discussion. The approximate dollar change is, well, that's going to be 10 basis points, right? The difference between 6.85 and 6.95 is 10 basis points. right? Remember, when we're talking about yield, we're talking about basis points. So 10 basis points. I told you a basis point is one 1/100th of par, or 1/100th, right, means a dime, right? It's one 1/100th of a percent of par is basically what that is. But anyways, I just told you I would think that as a dime or 10 cents, right? What I'm doing here is I'm just taking the difference that, and then I'm going to times that by 10, right? 10 basis points times 10 cents. And boom. And hopefully that would be one of our answers, which means it's changed by $1, right? So that would be the answer. You would tell me that the approximate dollar change in price is $1. 10 basis points. I just told you basis points is 10 cents, or 1/100th of a bond point. All right, so let's just read the question again. A 7% general, 7%, a 7% general obligation bond matures in 1 year. A municipal dealer is quoting the bond. You should definitely know that all bonds trade over the counter with dealers that charge markups or markdowns. The bond has just changed its quote. So I had a quote that from a 6.85 basis, meaning if you buy my bond at the price I want, your yield to maturity would be 6.85. And now I've changed my quote in a price that would mean that you could have a 6.95 basis or yield to maturity. So that means it's changed. My quote has changed 10 basis points. And a basis points, as we said, is 10 cents, right? So 10 cents times 10 means the answer here is $1. All right, let's try another one. So here's another one. It's a 7% general obligation bond matures in 1 year. The municipal dealer is quoting a quote for 7.30 basis. 7.30 basis. So again, when we hear basis, we're thinking yield, we're thinking yield to maturity. And when we're talking about yield, we're talking about basis point. The bond point is typically about the price. So what we're being asked here is the difference in how the yield relates to the price. And so now they say, I've changed my quote. And now if you buy the bond from me, your yield to maturity, your basis would be 7.35. And again, we'll just put that in there. Boom. And let's put that in basis again, fancy word for yield to maturity. Okay, so now, again, now that we know that it's a basis point is about the yield, by the way, both times this person was messing this up using a bond point. Bond points and basis points are different things. You know, we always have to do RTFQ, read the full question. So the difference between that yield is 5 basis points. If you want to sound like a player, players call that a BIP. You know, BIPs. So 5 BIPs. And people say, oh man, you must be a bond trader. All right, so there's our. And then we said a basis points, or 5 BIPs, we said is 1/100th of a bond point, or we said a way to think about it is 10 cents. So now we simply take the 5 times the 10 cents. And if we have 10 cents, we have, right, 5 basis points times 10 cents. You can think of 10 cents as 0.10 of a dollar, 1/100th of a dollar if you want, 10 cents, or 1/100th, of $10. Anyways, we times that, and we get the change is 50 cents. Right, so again, let's just do this one. Let's read this question again. Both questions were missed by the test taker by confusing, again, a question about basis with a bond point. They're different things. So a 7% general obligation bond matures in 1 year. A municipal dealer quoting the bond has changed his quote from a 7.30 basis, fancy word for yield to maturity, to a 7.35 basis or yield to maturity. The approximate dollar change is, well, we compare those two. That's 5 basis points. We said a basis point is 1/100th of a bond point. I think an easier way to think of it is 10 cents. And so 5 times 10 cents is 50 cents. All right, so hope you found that helpful. Remember, inch by inch, your Series 7 is a cinch, yard by yard. Your Series 7 is hard. I'm working my way through these explications. Make sure you're being clear about a bond point, which primarily refers to a bond's price. They are related. And when you're being asked about changes in yield. And I'll just give you one more here before we call it a day on this explication request. And so here's an example. Let's say a 9% yield to maturity or basis and an 8% basis or yield to maturity. So no bond person is going to say the difference between those two bonds is 1%. No, the difference between those would be 1%. As we said, 1% would be 100 in terms of yield, 100 bips. So we would say that's 100 basis points difference. And that's how we would refer to that in the bond business. We wouldn't refer to that as 1%. But that's what that is. And let's put that bit of color. So okay, so hope you found that helpful. And like I say, once again, inch by inch, your Series 7 is a cinch, yard by yard, your Series 7 is hard. I'll work my way through the rest of these explications. I got a couple more. Hope to see you tonight on our Tuesday Community Weekly live stream, Q&A. Until then, bye-bye.